Logo, BAME Vision. Good afternoon and welcome to the BAME Vision Eye Care for Autistic People webinar. My name is Bhavini Makwana. I'm the chair of BAME Vision. Today, this workshop, you will find you will learn about different autistic characteristics, and we'll be talking about different practices you can embed and learn about, and how to make appointments and the environment more accessible, both for the patient and the person you're supporting, as well as the professional as well, because eye care is important for everyone to access. We'll hear from a number of speakers today: Stephen Kill from SeeAbility, Lance Campbell from SeeAbility, Amrit Simi from Moorfields Eye Hospital, and Jayshree Vasani, who's a dispensing optician, and we'll give them proper introductions as and when they speak. I did mention that this meeting is being recorded, so you may find that your video and your audio is muted and turned off. But you will, and that's just basically to ensure that when the presenters are talking, that everyone can hear them clearly. But you will get a chance to unmute yourself and put your video on should you wish to in the question and answer session. You can also pop your question in the chat that will be that is being monitored, so we will read out your questions in that session. Or you may wish to raise your hand and then unmute, and it'll be nice to sort of hear from you who you are and where you're based, just so we know what your name is. So without further ado, I'd like to first of all hand over to Stephen Kill, who is the National Eye Care Service Development Manager at SeeAbility, and Lance Campbell, who is the Eye Care Champion at SeeAbility, and they will do a proper introduction and tell them a little bit about themselves and what they do at SeeAbility. So over to you, Stephen and Lance.
Thank you, Bhavini. Okay, first thing I'll try to do then is to share my screen. Okay. Is that sharing now? Yes?
Yeah.
Thumbs up, lovely. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Lance and I are really happy to be here from SeeAbility, talking about eye care for autistic people and talking more about our work. It's quite timely that we're doing this, because this week, Twitter tells me, is Autism Acceptance Week. So you can search for the hashtag on Twitter and hear more about all of the activities that are taking place around good lives and good support for autistic people. So my name is Steve Kill. I work for SeeAbility as a National Eye Care Services Development Manager. And I'm going to be one of the SeeAbility speakers this afternoon. And I'm going to hand over briefly to Lance, my colleague, so that Lance can introduce himself as well.
Hello everyone, my name is Lance Campbell. I am a London Eye Care Champion for SeeAbility as well. I work part-time and I work with other Eye Care Champions colleagues, which I will explain a bit more about what we do in the next slide.
Lovely, thank you, Lance. So yeah, obviously we'll be talking all about eye care and access to eye care this afternoon, and hopefully that means that we all appreciate the importance of eye care and vision in our lives. Going back to Autism Acceptance Week this week, I read that the theme for that is around inclusion in the workplace. And we know that's really important because our working experience is enhanced by how much we can see. So things that we'll be saying this afternoon consistently will be the importance of people getting their eyes checked, understanding how much somebody can see, and therefore understanding what support the person needs to do the things they want to do in their life. So vision is obviously really important in doing that. And you also hear us say, I think at various times throughout, about eye care being for all people, not being limited to any particular groups, but for everybody, including people who are autistic. Okay, just briefly to say a bit about SeeAbility that Lance and I work for. So SeeAbility is a charity which is originally established in 1799, so a long time ago. We were previously known as the Royal School for the Blind, and we support people with learning disabilities, people who are autistic and with sight loss in their lives. We do other activities as a charity as well. So we also support people to get connected online digitally. And that's become particularly important in the last couple of years, of course, as life has changed. And again, with going back to the theme of employment, we also support people with disabilities to find paid employment. And so that links in nicely with what we were talking about a moment ago. So the bit of SeeAbility that we're talking about this afternoon, from our perspective, is the eye care side of things. And we have an eye care team at SeeAbility, and we're all about supporting people or helping people to get access to good eye care, people with learning disabilities, autistic people, and thinking both about adults and children. So we'll talk a bit more about our work as we go through our presentation. One aspect of that in terms of the children is that we've been working with NHS England to enable children who go to special schools to get their eyes checked. So that's a service for children having their eyes tested, having glasses dispensed, and ongoing support with their glasses and with their eye care. So that's a big part of the work that we've been doing in recent years, and that continues to be an important thing for us now. Okay, I'm going to hand over for Lance for this slide. Lance is an eye care champion, so he's going to tell you a bit more about the work that he and his colleagues do in that role.
Okay, so as mentioned before, I am an London eye care champion for SeeAbility. I work alongside my colleague Grace, who's also a London eye care champion. We both have different learning disabilities. I'm mildly autistic, and I'm not visually impaired, but I'm mildly autistic. And Grace is visually impaired and has learning disabilities. And our goal as eye care champions is to help people with learning disabilities and autism to look after their eyes, promoting eye care for people with learning disabilities and autism, and just making more people in like eye clinics or self-health advocacy groups to be more eye care aware. And we do have champions in the Northwest as well, who do the same thing as what we do, and we work together in order to do that for both Northwest and London. Next slide, please, Steve.
Okay. There you go, Lance.
Thank you. What is autism? Autistic spectrum disorder is an umbrella term for a wide range of conditions. Autistic people, some autistic people would have difficulty with communication or interaction, specifically in social settings and other and different social setting areas as well. Some of them may have restrictive or repetitive behavior, activities or interests, and interests that other people might not have the same interest, but autistic people might have these interests that is different from other people. And they may see signs of doing some repetitive behavior, like in schools or in colleges or even at work as well. Around 700,000 people have autism in the UK, about 1% of the population. So I believe it is very important to make sure that eye care is definitely more aware in the clinics and the health advocacy groups and different places as well, clinics as well, in order to help the autistic people in getting the equal eye test that they deserve. Next slide, please, Steve.
Okay.
So lots of people have both a learning disability and autism. Some studies say people with learning people with autism are more likely to need glasses and have problems with accommodation, but more research is needed. And accommodation is when someone who may be autistic or have a learning disability, and like when they focus on one thing, that is like in a distance that they can see. If that one thing is moved further away or closer up, then the eyes would have difficulty in focusing on that one thing when it's moved. Many people have problems with visual processing differences, such as like or dislike of bright lights or shiny objects. Some autistic people may find if you shine a bright light, then they might not feel comfortable with that, and they might have a reaction to that. And so it's very important to make them aware of what is going to happen throughout the eye test as well, any other clinics as well. Next slide, please, Steve.
Okay.
So how autistic people feel about eye care. So there'll be a lot of autistic people that will have fear and anxiety about having an eye test, especially if it is their first time having it and they've never had it before, so they won't know what is to be expected. An eye test may be too fast-paced. Sometimes clinics might go through the test very quickly to where it would overwhelm the person with the person with autism or learning disabilities. Communication may be too quick, so when they go through what's happening, maybe they might talk a little too fast for them. It might not be at the same pace that the person with autism would be used to, or may feel comfortable with. May be worried about close contact with the optician. Sometimes the optician might walk towards them without them realizing what's going on, and they might feel very overwhelmed or nervous about what's going to happen. Maybe worried about bright lights. Sometimes people might have that fear before they start the eye test. Some people might be nervous about the PPE or sensory overload for the equipment that they use. Again, someone with autism might not know what that equipment is being used for. I might get worried and nervous. Next slide, please, Steve.
Lance, do you want to mention, that's fantastic, just about we put that photograph in, and just because that might illustrate sort of difficulties that somebody might experience. So could you explain or describe what's happening in the photo? So
in the photo, the optician is shining a bright light into the patient's eyes, and that is the bright light that people with autism might be worried about and might feel nervous and uncomfortable with. Yeah, so it's a good example, isn't it, that somebody who has been for lots of eye tests might be very used to seeing that and might be quite relaxed and calm about it, but somebody who hasn't experienced that very much would find it a bit more stressful and feel more anxious. So it's nice to explain that. So that's great. Thank you, Lance. And I understand we're going to hear a bit more from you later on with a bit more of your own story. Yeah. Fantastic. Okay, thank you, Lance. So I'll move on to the next slide. So we've heard a bit about some of the barriers there and some of the things that make it difficult for autistic people to access eye care services. And I would say that the things that stop autistic people from getting good eye care will also be things that will affect other areas of healthcare as well. There'll be parallels with accessing dental treatment and other services. So there's some comparisons that we can make there. So the solutions also can sometimes cross over from different areas. So, good practice in one area is often good practice in another area as well. I'll read these out and then I'll sort of talk about them in a little bit more detail. So some of the solutions in accessing eye care for autistic people would include needing lots of time and understanding, as Lance was explaining there. Explain what is going to happen so there are no surprises. Demonstrating a test on a carer or parent first of all. Listen to the carer, that's an important one. Ensuring space is given when needed to have a break during testing.
and ask the person, or ask if the person wants a familiarization visit prior to appointment. So the sorts of things that we're talking about here are, the eye test is more likely to go well if the person feels prepared and knows what to expect, and if there's enough time that's allowed. And that links in with what Lance was describing just before. And things that can do that, if somebody can go to the practice beforehand and see the practice if they've never been before, maybe meet the optometrist, maybe go into the examination room, just so that they've got a chance to check out the environment before they go for the actual eye test, then that can help the person definitely. The thing about time is really important as well. And again, Lance said that sometimes people might feel a bit rushed. And so if extra time can be given, or taking a break during the testing, then that helps the person to just sort of to be calm and to be ready for the next part that's going to happen. The communication aspect is really important, so that the optometrist is communicating in a way the person can understand, not using too much jargon or difficult language that the person may not fully grasp. And again, that helps to explain what's going to happen. So I think the worst thing is when you go for an appointment and you've no idea what's going to happen next at all, and you have to go along with it. So autistic people definitely, I think, would feel that they appreciate the explanation of the next test, what's going to happen and what can they expect it to be like. And something you can do is, if there is another person there, a supporter or a carer, some of the tests can be demonstrated on the carer first of all, so that the person can see that it's okay and they've seen it with somebody else, and so they feel more comfortable. So yeah, the thing about no surprises is definitely important. And so the person is sort of is led through the eye test, they understand what's happening, they feel they've got control there, and then that can definitely lead to better outcomes. Okay, the other slide I have about solutions in accessing eye care relates to some SeeAbility resources that we have on our website that we've put together over the years. And we put together lots of easy read information about eye care services. And so when I say easy read, what I mean is that the language is aims to be more easy for people to understand. So in an easy read document, you can expect the sentences to be shorter, not going on and on and on as a very long sentence that somebody would lose the thread of. The language and the terminology within the sentence is also important. So trying to avoid long words unnecessarily that would confuse somebody or that the person wouldn't understand. And try and avoid acronyms and sort of abbreviations that would be technical and the person wouldn't understand either. So the language is really important, and also the fact that we use images with easy read information, so there'll be a photograph or a drawing to accompany the writing, which also explains what it's all about. And so that helps the person with their understanding. And we find with easy read information, it can often be accessed by the person, by some people directly, that they can read it themselves and understand. But equally, it's the sort of thing that can be shared. So a person can go through an easy read document with somebody else, somebody in their family or a carer or supporter, and look at it together and explain things. And the carer then helps to explain things in a way the person can understand. So again, it's that important carer role, because they know the person best of all. We want the person to be in control, and we want the carer's voice to be heard as well. So those resources that we have around having an eye test and wearing glasses and getting treatment for eye problems are on the SeeAbility website, and they're free for people to download and to use in eye tests or hospital eye clinics and so on. Something else that we put together is an online database of opticians. The reason we did that is because probably the most common thing that people ask us is, where should I go to get my eyes tested if I'm an autistic person or somebody with a learning disability? And so we wanted to be able to give people a bit of a steer. So over the years, we've in reaching out to optometrists, we've had optometrists who've registered their practice details on the database around the country so that people can look for services near to them. And that helps to give people a bit of a steer in where to go to see a service that is openly welcoming people who are autistic or people with learning disabilities. So that's one step on the journey. But that's definitely not the final answer. So there is more that we need to do. So something else that SeeAbility is working hard on at the moment is something called the LOXU pathway, or also known as Easy Eye Care. And this is a recognition that the standard eye test doesn't work for everybody. Sometimes an eye test is limited in terms of time available. And as we've been hearing, that doesn't work well for everybody who is autistic. Some people do need a longer appointment. As a result of this, so some parts of the country have commissioned a specialist eye care pathway for people with learning disabilities and autistic people. This pathway is more appropriate in that it offers a longer appointment, or the person can go along in shorter appointments, several appointments. They can do the familiarization visit in advance. It uses the easy read information that we were looking at a moment ago. The practitioners have additional training, and importantly, the pathway is properly funded. So it's not based on goodwill or if it's possible, but it's a fully commissioned service. So SeeAbility, alongside the work that's happening in special schools, we feel that this is a really, really important solution for eye care nationally. And so this is what we're working on around the country. Lance mentioned our Northwest Eye Care Champions, so they're working upon this pathway, which is already commissioned in the Northwest. And we also have a new project in London where a chap called Trevor Hunter and a colleague called Grace McGill, who is also an eye care champion, are working together to get the LOXU pathway commissioned in London. And we feel this is really, really important because this would make a big step forward for access to eye care for autistic people. So that's something that we're prioritizing at the moment. And if you'd like to work with SeeAbility on any of these areas, then please do get in touch and we'd be delighted to hear from you. Okay. I think I'll be wrapping up in a moment and handing over, but I did want to give a mention to something called cerebral visual impairment, or CVI. I know the term CVI can be confusing because we have a certificate of vision impairment as well. But this CVI, cerebral visual impairment, also known as brain-based visual impairment, is something we wanted to highlight because it's something that's often misunderstood, including amongst autistic people. So we understand lots of eye conditions are to do with problems within the eye itself, like a cataract is a problem to do with the lens in the eye. But in order to see well, it's not just about what happens in the eye, it's also about what happens when the information travels to the brain. So the brain needs to receive the information and to understand it and to make sense of it. And some people have conditions which make it difficult for them to do that. And so the brain has difficulty understanding the vision it's receiving, which means their vision is affected. So because you should be receiving these slides after the webinar, I put in a fantastic YouTube link from a young guy called Alfie Fox who has cerebral visual impairment. And it's definitely worth watching his 3 or 4 minute video to understand how he sees the world, how he perceives the world, and how he feels about that, you know, how it changes the way that he interacts with his environment and his surroundings, what's difficult and how he can overcome some of those challenges. And as we said before, it's really important that we understand how much somebody can see so we know what support is needed for that individual. Cerebral visual impairment can affect, as an example, halves of vision. So it may affect the left side of vision on each eye. So people may see well to the right of each eye, but have poor vision on the left side. And that's quite a difficult thing to understand because it may appear the person is seeing things in a normal way and are reacting to visual stimulus. But you know, as a result of the eye examination, this may be found that the person is actually struggling in certain areas. So it's something that we wanted to highlight for people to be aware of. And so I do recommend that you check out the video after the webinar. Okay. So as I say, we're going to hear more from Lance later on with more of his own personal story. On this slide, we've just got our contact details for myself and Lance. And our website details if you want to get in contact or to ask us any questions about working with SeeAbility. But I think that's all from myself and Lance for the time being, so I'll pause there.
Thank you, Stephen and Lance, for that wonderful presentation. And like Stephen mentioned, They've kindly given permission for us to share the presentations with you all, so you can have access to that, where you will have the link to that video that was mentioned featuring Alfie. So we will share that with you all. I'm now going to hand over to Amrit Simi. She's the advanced orthotist at Moorfields Eye Hospital. Good afternoon, Amrit. Welcome.
Thank you, Bhavini. Hello to everyone, and thanks for coming today. I'm just going to share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's just okay. So yeah, as Bhavini mentioned, I'm Amrit Semi, the orthoptist at Moorfields Eye Hospital. So I'm just going to be talking a bit about, just leading on a bit from what Stephen and Lance have talked about adults and children with special educational needs, in particular autism. And then we have a service for children and adults with special educational needs at Moorfields, in particular the children's service, which we've most recently developed. So I'll just explain and talk through that as well. So just a bit of background, and Stephen and Lance already have kind of mentioned a bit as well. And the one thing that I really wanted to point out is children with and adults as well, really, with autism typically don't actually have reduced vision, and sometimes when they come to have an eye test, we think or feel that they might have reduced vision, but it might not be true reduced vision. It's actually that they might have difficulty in knowing how to use their vision. So it's a processing problem, so with the brain not understanding how to use their vision. And I've just got a few interesting statistics here. So for the population of those with autism, it's been found that 20% would have a strabismus, and strabismus, for those who don't know, is when you have two eyes which are not aligned, so one eye is turning in an opposite direction to the other one, and so that can be sometimes significant in those with autism. But again, like I explained with reduced vision, it might be that that's not very different to the normal population. It's also been most recently found that they can have reduced accommodation, and I'll talk a bit about this in a couple of later slides. But that is actually a bit more than we would have previously expected. But I won't touch too much on that now. I'll explain that a bit later. Refractive error, meaning the fact that whether they need glasses or not, it's been found that they typically have about 29% of the autistic population have a refractive error, which again is not very different from the normal population. Hypermetric saccades basically means that they have a slow and inaccurate ability to read. So when we read, we use very small, fast movements, which we call micro saccades. And it has been found that those with autism struggle with that. And so that they typically need larger print size. So not necessarily for that fact that they have reduced vision, it's the fact that they have that difficulty with small, fast movements when looking at things close up. So it's always really important that, you know, when children are given tasks to do, especially in school, and they're autistic, that the font size is made a little bit bigger to help them as best as we can. And any other pathology, 40%, again, that's not far from the normal population. That's relating to if there's any problems with the back of the eye, the health of the back of the eye. So just a few really interesting points I thought to make, and when Stephen and Lance have kind of already mentioned as well. I think it's really, really important that when we're assessing a person with autism, we really try to think about what they can see, and that remembering that it's really, it may possibly be that they're not struggling to see, it's a difficulty with the processing. So if you know, as we know, that autism can affect the levels of concentration and therefore in turn can affect their ability to see, because if you want to see, that requires a lot of attention. So that's relating back to the fact that they might not necessarily have reduced vision, and we need to do as much as we can as practitioners to be able to eliminate those difficulties in concentration, so that we can help get the best out of them and actually see what their true vision ability is, or reading ability is. So I mentioned in the previous slides about accommodative ability. So accommodation is your ability to focus, and in particular there's different types of accommodation. So particular when we're talking about those with special educational needs and autism, that we're talking about the reduced ability, reduced accommodative lag. So accommodative lag is that the person is actually able to focus or accommodate, but they're unable to generate enough focusing ability for that appropriate target that they're looking at. So if we think about it, that when we read at arm's length distance. So it might be that when they're looking at a book at arm's length distance, it might be that they're able to not accommodate effectively for that distance, but their accommodation for that distance would be the same as a typically normal person for, say, this distance, which is very close, at 20, say 10 to 20 centimeters away from your face. So accommodative lag is that they actually can focus, but it's just a reduced ability for that particular target that they're looking at. So accommodation actually affects most people with special educational needs, and we've all generally in the health and eye care profession always been aware that it's majority of those with Down syndrome that are affected by this problem. And so research, a lot of research by Maggie Woodhouse have found that 70 to 80% of the population with Down syndrome have accommodative lag. So we're all very aware of that in our profession, and we always kind of make sure that we assess that ability to see whether we can do anything to help. And following on from Down syndrome, the next prevalent population of those with special educational needs is children with cerebral palsy. So it's less prevalent in them, but it's still significant. So research has found that it's about 30 to 40% of the population with cerebral palsy have accommodative lag. And most interestingly, more recently, I think it was 2018, a study was done, a UK-based study was done, and found with a large population of children with autism and young adults, found that 18% of them had accommodative lag, and that was a very new finding that a lot of people were not aware of. So what can we do to improve accommodative lag? We usually provide bifocal glasses. So bifocal glasses are usually given to people over the age of 40 when their ability to read reduces and our focusing muscles get weaker generally as we get older. But it can also be found to improve accommodative lag in those with special educational needs. So they will have their normal prescription for glasses if they need them in the distance, and then they'll have a line halfway through the glasses, and the bottom part of the glasses will be of a stronger amount, so usually about 3 times more than they need for the distance, to help them focus. And research has found, and I'll talk about a case that we had at Moorfields recently, that giving those bifocal glasses really helps those children with the compliance of their glasses. So if they have previously not been given glasses and they just refuse to wear them, and we think, oh, it's just because they're autistic and they just don't want to wear their glasses, it's actually can be a little bit more than that, they're still struggling to focus for close up. And we found that when they're given these bifocal glasses, they suddenly start wearing the glasses all the time because it really, really helps them. And in turn, if you think that now they're wearing the glasses, they're seeing better, actually it improves their literacy skills, and that's been demonstrated in studies as well, to show that actually when the children were given the bifocals, they started wearing their glasses better, and their literacy skills, their improvement at school in educational has got much better. So it makes such a difference. And we had a case of a 13-year-old in our clinic at Moorfields not that long ago, a few months back, and I personally saw him, and he'd been coming to us for years and been given glasses for the distance, and he's autistic, and Mum was just saying he just doesn't wear the glasses. She was really good at trying to get him to wear them. She had one pair for home, one pair for school, and he just wouldn't wear them. And then we thought, let's have a look. There's a specific test that we can do aside your normal eye test to see whether they have accommodative lag. So we did the test, and it found that he did have this accommodative defect. So we prescribed the bifocal glasses, and 2 or 3 months later, I spoke to the mother, and she was so thankful. She was over the moon. She just could not explain how pleased she was with these glasses. The first thing she said was, he's not taken them off since he got them. So before, she had multiple pairs of glasses, one at school, one at home, and he just wouldn't wear them at all. Since he got those glasses, only one pair, and he's not taken them off. And his interest in reading was zero before. He would not look at anything close up. She'd even bought him a laptop to help him with his schoolwork, wouldn't use it. But as soon as he started wearing the glasses, while I was on the phone to her, talking to her, she said, he's on the laptop, and he's never used the laptop before, and she just could not explain how pleased she was. And we've had a few cases like this, so it just really goes to show the difference it can make when we really understand the reasons why those with autism or special educational needs struggle, and we don't just say, well, it's just because they can't see. There's more to it, and if we really help and we really understand what's going on, it can make such a difference. So as I explained, we have specific clinics for those with special educational needs at Moorfields, and we recently, in the last 6 months, developed a clinic for those children. And before, what was happening is they'd come in, and we have lots of different clinics, and they were just dotted around lots of different busy clinics. As you can imagine, it will be really busy. So we identified that we really need to have a specific clinic for them, because there was long waits, it was very busy, children were getting very upset in the waiting area, even though we're trying to see them as soon as we could. It was very noisy, and it was really, then by the time they come into the consulting room, it would be so difficult to assess them. So the clinic is basically run by an orthoptist, so we are specialists in assessing vision in non-verbal and verbal children and adults, and assessing eye movement disorders. So they come in and see the orthoptist, they see the optometrist, who will check whether they need glasses and also look at the health of the back of the eye. So there's not too many clinicians, although this diagram looks very different, but it's more about the support that we get aside the clinic. And the clinic is tailored around their needs. So they sometimes they don't need to see everyone. We think about what the child's needs are, what really would be best in that particular clinic, considering their condition and how they would be best benefited from the service. We have a family support service at Moorfields. So the family support service kind of help liaise with outside organisations like vision impairment teachers, the schools, SeeAbility, any particular organisation to help support that child with their difficulties and their disabilities. And so they'll talk to the family and kind of so we can really understand the bigger picture. We have play leaders to help keep them entertained in the waiting area. We have a paediatrician support who they don't actually see in the clinic, but the paediatrician will really help us support if there's any additional requirements that we have. And that particular paediatrician also works at Great Ormond Street. And we have an ophthalmologist as well support. So we have lots of support to kind of make sure that we're getting the best for the child. And the children's clinic is a 0 to 16 years, but they can transition to our adult vision clinic, which is very similar to the children's one. So if if there's a difficulty that they can't find a local optometrist who will be able to assess them, they can actually stay with us, and they can go to our adult vision clinic, where again, we're tailoring the clinic around their needs, and it's kind of a transition from the children's clinic. So we're making sure that if they really need to have their eyes tested and they can't go to the local optometrists that will be able to support them, then they can stay with us. We have specific equipment to assess their vision. So a lot of times we can't get a proper vision test, an accurate vision test, so we need to assess their visual behaviour. So there's lots of different tests, in particular the Bradford Visual Function Box, which was developed specifically for those with special educational needs. We have so many orthoptists and clinicians, optometrists at Moorfields. So for this particular clinic, we've made sure that we have the same group of staff to ensure continuity of care, and that they get the long-term rapport for those children, and they really understand those children and their families, and it really helps with compliance and getting the best out of the child. And we have lots of sites at Moorfields, so at the moment it's only at our main site, but we're planning to roll this out to all our other sites. And we have provided in-house training to our team to enhance core skills, and that's made such a difference. So we really understand what best assessments are needed for these particular children, and it's really made a difference to getting the right tests, the right treatment, and effective assessment from the child. And we have a hospital passport, so we can really understand the needs and the likes and dislikes of that particular person, whether it's an adult or a child with special educational needs. So when they come into our clinic, all new patients will actually get a telephone appointment. So before they even come in, that time just to spend with the carer or the parent to understand how we're going to get the best assessment for when they come in. So what would they like? Would they like a long appointment when they come in, have everything done on the first day? Would they like things done separately? Sometimes they want to take the drops. Sometimes they have to have drops to put in to assess their eyes. So sometimes they want us to put them in. Sometimes they want to take them home and put them in themselves and come in on a separate visit and split the appointment, which we can do. So we gather all of this information from the telephone appointment. And then before the actual clinic, on the day of the clinic, all the clinicians will meet and we'll have a pre-clinic briefing, so we can understand each patient, what we're going to do for each patient to help with the clinic flow, so that we're not running in and out of rooms, discussing with each other in between, and that will lengthen the appointment time for that particular patient and maybe affect their concentration abilities. We're also working on some videos to develop for patient experience videos, so that they can go on our website and social media, so that people, children and their parents and carers can watch them beforehand, so they know what they're going to what's going to happen when they come in for their eye test, who they're going to see, what the clinic looks like. So it just makes the surroundings a bit more familiar for them. So that's the end of my talk. If anybody has any questions, happy to answer them at the end, or if you want to email me, that's my email address. That's it from me. So over to Bhavini.
Thank you so much, Amrit, for that great presentation. And yes, we'll be doing we'll be coming to questions and answers if you have any for any of our speakers so far, very, very shortly. Now I'd like to hand over to Jayshree Vasani, who is a dispensing optician and also wears many other hats. Over to you, Jayshree.
Okay, thank you, Bhavini. Let's just see whether we can get ourselves to share the screen. That would be a good idea, wouldn't it? There we go. Right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jayshree Vasani. I'm a dispensing optician and a CPD facilitator. I'm one of the founding members of the BAME Vision Group. So for myself today, what I want to do is make sure that we understand a little bit more about what's going on in terms of our, let me just get ourselves sorted here. My screen is stuck, I think. Just make sure. Where I am. The important thing for me really is that all the work that's already been done by these guys. So the work that already Stephen, Lance and Amrit have done is shored up by what I'm going to say. And the message is very clear that we need to make sure that eye care is available for everyone. It's accessible to everyone, and everybody can access an eye examination, that simple thing. So I'm going to see if this video works. If it doesn't, we can always share it later. If it works, great. If it doesn't, no worries. I can share the link. Let's see. Always a bit thingy with tech.
Autism is a lifelong disability which affects how people like me interact with the world. There are about 700,000 adults and children on the spectrum. And like everyone, each autistic person has their own strengths and challenges. But all of us have difficulties with communicating and interacting with other people. This could mean not speaking at all, needing longer to process information, or not understanding facial expression. We also engage in repetitive behaviour, doing or thinking the same things over and over. This is sometimes for fun, and sometimes to help deal with our anxiety. People on the autism spectrum can also find unexpected changes, however small, very distressing. Then there is sensory overload, where the noise, smells, touch, bright lights become very painful and overwhelming. All these challenges can make the world feel very scary and hard to understand, and sometimes send us into physical, emotional meltdowns or shutdowns. It is very important that autistic people get help and engage. But life can become very difficult if children or adults don't get the right support or understanding. Autistic children are 3 times more likely to be excluded from school. Only 1 in 6 autistic people in the UK have a full-time job, and over a third of autistic adults suffering from mental health problems. The National Autistic Society is the UK's leading charity for autistic people. Since 1962, it's been changing society's attitude, transforming individuals' lives. We want to create a society that works for autistic adults and children, and with your help, we can.
Okay, so that little video there just gave you a bit of a flavour of what it's like to be a person with autism and the challenges that people can face. So the National Autistic Society, like I said, is the UK charity for people with autism, affected by autism, and they have 20,000 members and over 100 branches, and they provide a huge range of support and information, as well as specialist services. Okay, so that's a charity that's actually got quite a presence, really, and it's important to look at what's around in terms of resources and what's available. Okay, let's see the next one. So they did they published a report, and the report was called Diverse Perspectives and the Challenges for Families Affected by Autism from the BAME Community. Okay, and if we think about it, diagnosis is quite a key part of this. You know, from diagnosis you can move on and see where things go. So how is that happening, and why is it that so many people are not getting the diagnosis? Why is it that people are not getting the support they need? Well, getting the diagnosis and accessing support is the first thing, an important thing, and there's lots of challenges and barriers in that particular thing already. So families may have limited knowledge, and they may not have access to translators and interpreters, and the information may be not available. Now, when you use an interpreter, that information not always be accurate as well, because they could be making assumptions and using their own cultural assumptions, and therefore that can mean that the clarity is lost that professionals can offer. So we have to think about how people are getting this diagnosis, and are the resources available for that side of things. Okay, so that's one thing to think about when you're thinking about that side of things. Okay, moving on then, thinking next then about, there we go, my slides seem to be playing up to date. Why are there so many people not getting the support? Communication, okay, with professionals. Lack of confidence. People don't feel confident sometimes with professionals in themselves. Do they understand my culture? Do they know what I'm talking about? So that again can be a bit of a barrier in terms of people accessing the supports that they need. A lack of awareness in the community itself, cultural stigma. You've got to think about what people think about. You know, if they don't understand the condition, they just think, okay, well, you know, is this something I can deal with? Is this something we just need to keep to ourselves? Is it to do with me? Is it that I did something wrong? People can, you know, in terms of that side of things, it's important that we make sure that people get help, you know, because stereotyping within the community and outside of the community, and that can lead to denial and isolation and not believing in the diagnosis. You just sort of think, well, this is not somebody in my child, this is not somebody in my family, or actually feeling that, okay, that's what's happened, but you need to keep it in the family and not really, you know, say much about it. And that can mean that families, carers, siblings, they miss out on the support and they get isolated themselves. So I think it's important to think about why people are not getting help from the BAME communities, and well, to be honest, anyone really, that's the important thing, but BAME communities particularly are finding it challenging, I think. Okay, next one. Having problems with the slides here today. So, thinking about cultural values now, when you're diagnosing a child with autism, because culturally, different cultures have different ways of being. You know, eye contact can be taken differently in different cultures. You know, for some cultures, having direct eye contact is considered rude. Okay, yet the lack of eye contact is considered one of the first sort of signs of autism in a child. So cultural misunderstanding of eye contact can lead to misdiagnosis. Similarly, failing to notice delayed speech, which is prominent in children with autism, is because if English isn't their first language, that's something that people again may not think about. So I think the important thing is culture does play a big part, and making sure that we understand that culture is key as well. Okay. Next one. I'm doing well on my slides. Here we go. Let's see if we can move it on. Okay. So this is a charity called Autism Voice, and they are doing a fantastic amount of work in terms of what's available. They actually are, you know, working with community, you know, mainly from families from Black, Asian, and minority ethnic, and they are doing a great amount of work with this agenda in mind, and they provide lots of different services. So I think the important thing here is to think about what services could they provide and what services do we need to provide. Okay, so let's see if I can. Okay, stuck again. So this is some of the services that they do provide: community outreach, mentorship, emotional support, social skills for young adults, a training program, and research and advocacy. And this is all sort of holistically providing care, information, and support for anybody with autism and from the BAME background. Okay, so I think we have to be aware of what's around and what's available, and see where we can signpost people in that side of things. Okay. Right. Move that on. Now, when we think about the healthcare side of things, and we're talking about barriers, it is multifactorial. Staff don't have sufficient training about autism, and maybe are, you know, unaware of reasonable adjustments. You know, the equity of access is not there. You know, there's barriers of language and communication, and we have to think about each individual, because each individual is different in what their condition is, and they may not even recognise the significance of symptoms and flag them up in a timely fashion, if you like. So that's why, if you think about it, lots of GPs do sort of a proactive approach, whether they do a health check, okay, and that could be done by an autism-aware practitioner in the GP practice, for example. Two things that have sort of come along. One thing is called the Autism Act, and that autism was included in a priority in the NHS England long-term plan, has prompted some change. And I think what we have to do really is think about where change can happen and how change can happen. But also, you know, okay, there's an act, and does that actually mean anything's happened? So the Autism Act was in 2009, and it states that basically there has to be a government strategy for improving services for autistic adults and underpinned by legal binding guidance to council. So really it's a case of everybody working together and making sure that there's a difference, okay? And as I believe, it has a built-in sort of review every 5 years. So that was in 2009. well, what's changed? Has anything changed? You know, has anything made a difference? That's what we need to think about, right? So let's see where that goes. Okay. Not doing well with my slides today. Let's try that. Okay. So with the Autism Act coming in 2009, we have to think about what's happened next. And let me just see. Just bear with me, technical hitches here. Just try one more time, otherwise we may have to go to somebody else and share the slides, and that would be good.
Yeah.
Needs to be a bit of a glitch on the old computer here. Can we get that ready, Bhavini?
Yeah.
Let's just see if I can do it one last time. Ah, there we are. Okay. Okay. So tips and tricks, okay, for people when you're doing the eye examination. We have to think about all the things that Stephen and Amrit and Lance have talked about. Importance of going for the eye examination, because they may not be able to tell you signs and symptoms, so make it part of a regular eye health check. Okay, we've heard that it can be stressful for patients, fear of the unknown and what can happen next with all these different types of kits. So again, you know, making sure that they know what's going on is important. Prepare for the visit, because it's important that it's talked through and we know what's going on in terms of what's going to happen. The procedure is important. And you can show them pictures of the place, or, you know, of the website, or staff pictures or names. So if you think about it, if you knew what the practice looked like, if you knew where it was, if you knew what was going to be coming to you, you would be much calmer, okay, in terms of actually, you know, accessing that place. So, you know, people might think, oh, if you do a new website, you might think, what's the point of actually showing, you know, having a little run through? If you did a little run through of the website and the practice and what it looks like, people might think, oh, is that really useful? It is for somebody to make sure that they know what they can get themselves familiar with what's going on, okay? And they could do a pre-visit. So a familiarization visit is basically somebody coming around, having a look, just meeting staff briefly, and that's it. No more, no less. And then if they come again, it means that they're used to that. They get used to doing that sort of thing. So it's important to try and break the visit up, okay, and make sure that that works. And once that's done in a couple of appointments, it means that patient finds it a bit more comfortable. Okay. Other tips and tricks: make sure that you can provide printed material which is nice and clear, black and white, and that can help anybody, not just a person with autism, okay, or anybody with anybody in terms of accessing, but anybody with communication deficit will also find that useful. It may be useful to take in comforters and soothers, okay, to make sure the eye exam goes well. And it can occupy them, okay? Like a toy, an iPad, or headphones, using phrases like "first we do, then you can do," so it gives them an idea of what's coming on, what's happening, and defining the length of the eye exam is important, and stating what you'll do and do it, and then that's it. Don't carry on and do more, because that's what you've told them you're going to do. So keep to what you're doing and do it consistently. And if they actually find that they're coming and they know what's happening and that's what you do, then you do this, then you do that. It makes it easy for them in terms of finding out what's happening. Okay, so that's also important. Okay, let's see if this works. So thinking about resources, I wanted to mention this. This is called At Beyond Words, We Make Stories. This is actually a storybook. It doesn't have any writing. It's all to do with pictures. And in fact, my colleague, Mr. Stephen Keel and Maggie Woodhouse, both people that I've got to mention today, have been involved in doing this book. And it's a fantastic resource, because what it does is talk you through. You can talk it through. The carer can talk it through with the person as to what's happening, what's going on. So you've got to use the resources that are there. And it's a useful resource to think about. Okay. So thinking about reasonable adjustments, making sure that the team knows what's going on beforehand, as Amrit said very nicely, having a team meeting, making sure that you know that it's going to be as smooth as it possibly can be, asking for an appointment, okay, making sure that might be useful, trying to book an appointment maybe at the start of the day or the end of the day where there's a little bit more quiet. and making sure that the person is supported by a carer that knows them well and is equipped to answer any questions that may, that the person might not be able to answer. Wearing of glasses, that's an important one, because okay, you've done the eye examination, that's great, but how do we get them to wear the glasses? It's important if they have more than one pair of glasses, making a sticker so that they know which pair of glasses to wear for what, okay? And ensuring the glasses are clean, okay, and current and comfortable, and ones that they've chosen, because all of this makes a difference in terms of engagement and making sure that they will wear the glasses and use the glasses, okay? Right, so that's the tips. Let's move on to the next bit. Okay, here we go. Stuck. Right, so if we think about autism, there are lots of people that have autism and learning disability, but there's lots of people that don't have the learning disability. And what do we do with that cohort, if you like? So there's lots of research and lots of stuff happening out there. And this is a current piece of research, brand spanking new off the press. And this was done in March 2022. So this is talking about autism and developing recommendations for service users. And this is actually based more towards patients with autism, but not with a learning disability. And this piece of work was done by Ketan Parmar, who's a PhD student, and it's quite an interesting resource, to be honest, because what it does do is highlight what can be done and what's useful. So if people do want to have a look at that, have a look, because that's brand spanking new off the press. Okay. So there's lots of resources. SeeAbility is a fantastic resource in terms of what we have. So this is just adding to the resources. So resources for adults, for autistic patients that come, that the practices can use to direct patients to. That's the important thing. And they were developed in partnership with autistic people based on their experiences, okay, and feedback. And they also, like I said, they're useful for patients without learning disabilities. So the best bit about this website is they have little video sections, okay? Because the important thing is that if somebody could explain what's going to happen in that test, somebody could see a little form, sort of 5, 10 second, 15-second video of what's happening in the test, then that makes them a bit more aligned to what's going to happen. There's no surprises. And this could be useful for anybody, really. If you've got an anxious patient, you could use it there as well. It's been done quite nicely and neatly, and like I say, it's all stacked together. So this is a website that you might find useful in terms of resources. Okay. Nearly there. Hopefully I'll be able to finish. So what we're talking about really in the eye care journey is anxiety, okay? Because there's anxiety coming all the way through if you're talking about a person with autism. Fear, stress, anxiety, and sensory overload is all comes together in one go when you go for an eye examination, okay? And not just when you actually have the eye examination, thinking about traveling to the practice, okay? Entering the practice for some people, causes a lot of anxiety. It's important that you meet the different people in the patient journey, and even that, having different people, as Amrit said, having lots of different people, interact. If you think about it, we're in a retail environment, okay, and that in itself can be there's lots of different people to interact with. If you see 5 different people before you see the optometrist, that's a bit of overload for people. So I think it's important to have the same staff dealing with this person, so they know what's going to happen. And lack of clear instructions. So, for example, we say, is it better 1 or 2? Well, what does better mean? It might be better to say, is it sharper? So they know what they're looking for. So language is important as well. Okay. And like I said, some tests can cause sensory overload because there's bright lights and you might be getting very close, you might be touching the person. Close proximity, again, if you don't know, if you're not going to tell people what you're doing, that's not going to go down well. So it's important to think about the whole journey, really, when you're talking, in this instance. Okay. So we're talking about the whole journey. We're talking about holistic eye care, really, and making sure that people can make it as stress-free as possible. So we're talking about before the eye examination, we're talking about booking appointments. Even that can be challenging. Booking appointments is difficult. So if you had online booking, people can choose what they want to do. They may not want to phone up because there's too many options. You go, oh, can you come this day, this day, this day, this day? It's just overload. That's too much. If you give somebody a chance to book the appointment electronically, for example, it means that they can choose in their own time, in their own space, what they want and what they want to do. That's important. As we said before, staff should introduce themselves and give clear instructions and be aware that the patient might be becoming stressed, making sure that people have time. By that we mean, instead of saying, is it 1 or 2, and then quickly moving on, say, is it 1 or 2? Well, giving people a little bit of time to process what you're asking them, okay? And making sure that you're adapting the eye examination in the best way possible. There. So this is the website that I was talking about, and it's quite, like I said, nice set of resources there, which you can utilise and have a look at. I think the important thing here is that it's been done with people in mind and using their experiences, and therefore it's quite a useful resource, to be honest. And if you wanted to do some further reading and you've got some time, my colleague Louise Gow, Dr. Louise Gow, has done a thesis on children with ASD, and it's an interesting and useful read. If that's you can take a picture of that and you've got a little bit of time, then that's, again, good background reading, lots of important information and resources in there. And again, it's what the basis of that is to say that the kids are in charge, if you like. They need to know what's going on. They need to be empowered with the eye examination and what's happening. Okay, so that's my presentation. Access to eye care should be available to all, and that means anyone and everyone can have an eye examination. Over to you, Pavini.
Absolutely great sentence to finish on, and we got through it even though with the minor tech issues. I'd like to now hand over to our final speaker for today's webinar, back to Lance Campbell, who'll be sharing more about his lived experience. So over to you, Lance.
Thank you, Pavini.
Okay, Lance, do you want me to get the slide up?
Okay, yeah.
Or do you need it, or?
I don't really need it because I know what I'm going to say.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. So as I said before, my name is Lance Campbell. I'm an eye care champion for SeeAbility, and I am mildly autistic. So I was diagnosed with autism at the age of 3 because my parents started noticing that, I was delayed in speech, like my learning skills were kind of delayed. So my parents had noticed that, so they questioned why that was. So that's when I was diagnosed with autism. So once my parents knew that I was autistic, they were able to know how to move forward with me. So when it came to school times, every time I was in lesson, I'd have like a learning support teacher come in and sit next to me and help me to, understand what's going on. And then when it came to exams, particularly GCSEs, I was allowed extra time. I was allowed someone to read the questions for me, just so I understand them. And I was allowed sometimes to be in a separate room from everyone else for some of the exams with a learning support teacher there. And also I was allowed a little break during the exam, well, kind of like a second to where I can walk out and get some fresh air. And then after that, college was pretty much the same. Learning support teacher in my classrooms, and English was a big struggle for me because I have one of my barriers is that when I see long, big text, that it does throw me off. So English GCSE was a struggle for me, but I eventually got it. Took a few tries, but I eventually got it. And then, so yeah, college was the same. Teacher assistant in the classrooms helping me to understand what the lesson was about. And then I went on to an internship at Charing Cross Hospital, where I was called Project Search. It's an organization where they help young people aged 16 to 25 to help them to find a job. And I did some experience in the audiology department, helping people with hearing problems. So I did some experience there. And then I did a presentation at Hammersmith and Fulham West London College, where I was explaining about Project Search and my own experiences as well, trying to promote Project Search. And from there is how I found my way to SeeAbility. So before I joined SeeAbility, I didn't realize how important having an eye test is, something my family and I just never really got around to doing. I didn't think was that important until I joined SeeAbility and I realized this is important. I went to have my first eye test, and yes, I was nervous because I didn't know what to expect and I never had one before. So they did explain that what they were doing, like how the test was going to work. They explained it clearly for me, and then they explained the results afterwards. And I think that definitely helped me because I was nervous. Because another example was back then when I went to the dentist as well, I was nervous, and I had to have braces done on my teeth where they had to screw it in. And unfortunately, they couldn't put me to sleep through that. So I had to stay awake throughout all the work that they were doing, which was quite painful and hard sometimes, but I managed to get through it. But I was extremely cautious and nervous beforehand when I knew that I was going to be awake throughout all what they were doing. But yeah, I just think it's important that people with learning disabilities and autism have equal access to eye tests or dental checks or hearing checks or anything, just because it's only fair for them to get the equal treatment as everyone else. And also some of the behavior patterns that they might display before might just be because they're trying to explain about pain that they might be going through, or the fact that, you know, they might have problems with eyes or teeth, but no one might not understand what they're talking about. But once they go for the checks and, you know, the problem has been solved, then it becomes much easier and better for people as well. And yeah, and as for me, I will be going to get my eye test done every 2 years now, as important as that is. So yeah, that's all my story.
Thank you, Lance. That was truly amazing. I mean, the sheer message of sharing that actually sometimes if you don't know about kind of support or different services, then you think that you don't need it, but actually equal access to services is so important. And you're so brave going through all those dental appointments. I don't think I would have been as brave. And, you know, congratulations on your education for persevering, and with the right adaptations, you know, you successfully completed them. So thank you so much, Lance, for sharing your story.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to Q&A or any comments or feedback people may have. Prava, is there anything in the chat, or would anyone like to raise their hand or unmute?
Just very quickly, Bhavini, the chat is very quiet, but there's one question about, can we get copies of the slides?
Yes, so we will be sharing the slides from each of the presentation, and those will include the links and the videos that were mentioned today. So absolutely, yes, along with the recording to this webinar as well.
Hi, Bhavina, it's Odette.
Hi, Odette.
Hi. I work now for Croydon, and I did invite SeeAbility to come and do one of our Facebook Live during the lockdown. But I kind of wanted to know if, so as a sight loss charity, if we have members who we think would benefit, how do we refer people to SeeAbility?
Stephen, do you want to take that one?
Yeah. Hi, Odette. Nice to talk to you again.
Hi.
Hi. So thank you for your question. Yeah, so SeeAbility, we have eye care champions who work across London who are able to help people to access eye care if people have learning disabilities or people who are autistic. So we're very happy for them to contact either Lance or myself or our colleague Grace, and just to let us know, you know, what sort of difficulties they're having or what sort of support they might need. And we're happy to have like an individual chat with people then and to assist however we can.
Thank you. That's excellent. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Currently on the text area. FN.
Anybody else have any comments, questions, or even feedback for any of our speakers?
Hi there, my name's Karen Walker and I don't know how to put my hand up on this thing, so I've just unmuted,
That's all right.
sorry.
That's okay.
I work for the sensory team in South Ayrshire in Scotland, so that was really interesting because I had my professional hat on, but my brother also has quite a profound learning disability and has autism, and to the best of my knowledge never had an eye test in his life, so I'm going to have a wee look at that. Are you aware of anywhere, obviously you're down south and I know there's stuff in the northwest, but is there much happening up in Scotland that you're aware of?
In terms of the support and the things that we've just done in today's webinar?
Yeah, plus we used to have something called the Bridge to Vision project, but my understanding is that that's stopped, and I'm not sure just what kind of services are available for eye tests for people with a learning disability and or autism up here, to be honest with you.
Stephen, how north do you go?
Yeah, good question. So I spoke earlier on about our optometrist database on our website, and so that's something that you'd be very welcome to check, and I can send you the link for that separately if needs be, to look for optometrists in Scotland who are again sort of promoting their eye care services for people with learning disabilities and autistic people. So that's a starting point in terms of trying to find a service. And we also spoke about the resources, the easy read fact sheets, the eye care information that's on our website as well. So that would be useful for people wherever they are in terms of the things we've spoken about today, helping somebody to prepare for the eye test, sharing information with the optometrist, what's going to happen during the eye test, wearing glasses if appropriate, and so on. So that would be useful in those instances. But I'm happy if you want to be in touch with us separately from the webinar, and we can give you some advice. That would be absolutely fine.
No, that's great. Thank you very much. My colleague Audrey Still is on the call as well, so she'll hate me for mentioning her by name. But so as we'll have a wee catch up, and probably one of us will get in touch.
Yeah, please do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. We have a further question in the chat. Can I ask Amrit if bifocals might also be appropriate when no refractive error exists, i.e. just magnification in the lower half?
Yeah.
The answer to that is yes. Sorry, my daughter's just jumped onto my lap. Yes, the answer to that is yes. We do often find that, like I said, children with special education needs and autism don't actually need glasses for their vision in the distance, but they might still have a difficulty with accommodation or accommodative legs. So yes, they can have bifocals. So if there's a concern about a child difficulty seeing with autism or special educational needs, please do get them referred in to us. Or see a local optometrist if you can, but if you wanted to be referred into us, make sure that the person referring specifies that they've got special educational needs, so that we can put them into that correct clinic.
Hi, it's Julie here. Hi, thanks Amrit for that. Would that apply to adults as well? Because I work in an adult sensory team, so I don't work with children personally. But the same.
Yeah, definitely. It would, like I said, apply to adults as well. Yeah, no, absolutely. And sorry, she's starting to be naughty. But yeah, no, we have the adult vision clinic, so we would be able to assess for that in the adult clinic as well. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Can I ask a question too? Sorry, I'm Jane.
Yeah.
I'm an ECLO in North London. I wanted to ask about the LOXU eye care pathway. Is that the eye care pathway from start to finish, or is that just based on the eye test?
Good question, Jane. Yes. So the LOXU pathway is thinking particularly about the main focus is on the eye test side of things. So it's to identify practices where somebody would go for their eye test with a community optometrist, and where they would be able to get their glasses as well. But of course, then depending on what was found within the eye examination, it would have those links in with hospital eye service as well to be referring on to the appropriate services within the hospital. So it starts with the optometry eye test, but it would go beyond that if needs be, depending on the patient need.
Okay, so in my head, there's in a way a kind of, it sounds like the Moorfields model, is dealing with the pathway, eye care pathway for people once they're kind of reaching, say, hospital sort of services, and then this is dealing, the LOXU pathway deals with it up until that point. Is that, because I'm thinking, okay, I'm working in hospital, am I looking at the LOXU pathway, or am I going to look to talk to people about how perhaps the Moorfields model can be, we can follow that or use that or link in with that, I suppose.
Yeah. No, it's a very good question. It's good to discuss it. So generally speaking, you know, as we said, everybody should be having an eye test, you know, every 2 years or sometimes every year. You know, ideally starting off with a community optometrist. And lots of people can stay within that service and it can work well. And that's our, you know, our case for saying that the LOXU pathway should be commissioned in all areas so that they get the extra time and support that they need. But then very much, if somebody has an eye health need, you know, an eye condition that needs more specialist treatment, then they should be referred into the hospital for them to look at glaucoma, cataracts, whatever it may be. So it's working together really. So, but it has to start out with the optometry appointment, and hopefully, you know, it's difficult at the moment, isn't it? Hospitals are so busy. We've had COVID. Eye clinics are very busy places at the moment, and it's also a journey to get to the hospital. As much as possible, if people can see their local community optometrists and get the service that they need and provided in the right way close to them, then that's going to be good for lots of different reasons, and only for the people who really need to go to the hospital to access that service.
Yes, undoubtedly. I also wanted to say, I wanted to ask more about the website, the database of optometrists, because I did try to find sort of people using that for patients with learning disabilities, but it wasn't really very successful. So can I ask more about it? Is it the case that people are self-electing to go on it and they're just listing pan disability access, or are they specifically offering that they offer support with people with learning disabilities? Because when I then phoned the practices, they said, oh, no, we don't do that. So I was sort of saying, you know, I have a patient with a learning disability, they live locally, can they come and see you? Is there an extended time for the appointment? What kind of services are you offering? And both of them were kind of, they were kind of behaving like they had never really heard of it, really.
Yes.
So,
yeah. No, it's a good question, and it can be confusing, so it's really good to be able to explain it. So, as I say, we set up the optometrist database because people didn't know where to go, but that's based on practices putting their own details onto the website and saying they have an interest and they welcome patients with learning disabilities and autistic patients. But in terms of the actual LOXU pathway, a formal, you know, specially commissioned pathway in London, where we're talking, then that's only commissioned in 2 boroughs, which is Sutton and also Barking and Dagenham. So there are practices in those 2 boroughs that can offer the extra time and the extra service, but in other areas, they're doing it a kind of like, not because they're commissioned or specially paid to do it. So it's a bit more challenging then. And this is one of the barriers really, you know, that as we say, opticians are businesses and things have to work for them. And if they need to offer extra time for a patient, it's only right that they should be recognised for that time. So that's why, again, we think there should be, formally, the LOXU pathway needs to be commissioned across the whole of London, so that there's, rather than it being sort of seen as the exception, which is at the moment, you know, well, where are these few practices that we can go and we're struggling? We'd love it that everybody knows about the pathway, and so people can access it from any area, and it's the norm that people know which practices they can go to. The community learning disability teams would know, the ECLOs would know, the local voluntary societies would know, and people could be signposted in the right way and then get the support that they need because the pathway is so successfully set up. And that's very much what SeeAbility is trying to work towards over the next 18 months in London. But Jane, I'm happy again, if we want to chat separately and maybe see who you've approached, or if we can offer any sort of any options there, we'd be very happy to do that.
yes, that'd be really good. Yes, thank you.
Thanks. We've got time for one more question. Is there anything in the chat, Prabhat?
Silence in the chat.
No? Okay. Anyone else in the audience that have a question or comment or feedback? No. Thank you so much for attending this webinar today, and thank you to all the presenters. I thought I'd just finish off by giving a little bit of introduction to BAME Vision. For those who have not been aware of BAME Vision and who we are, we're a member organisation and members from the sight loss charity sector, the eye health sector, and we have those with lived experience of sight loss on our committee, and both Jayshree and Lance sit on our committee, and Stephen, who supports Lance. So we do have our social media channels. We have our own website, and on our website you can find all the committee members that sit on our committee. You can find past recordings to webinars. We've done a number of workshops around National Eye Health Week last year, around diabetes, diabetic retinopathy, and many, many more. And the webinars, we've got speakers who share vital information in different languages. We've got different people sharing their own lived experiences, tackling cultural barriers, talking about stigma. We talk about perception, myth bust, that's really important. And we talk about information and resources, support to services as well. So feel free to check our website where you can see past recordings, blogs, and also documents that provide information in various languages, including it's Ramadan starting tomorrow, and one of our committee members, Subhashita, has put an excellent resource together about how eye drops should be maintained and can be maintained without the fear of breaking your fast. So, please check it out. We're on Facebook. We have a Facebook page. We're on Twitter, and we're on LinkedIn, BAME Vision. So you can find out more about us there. We just have a quick poll, if it would be okay just to complete that, as it helps us. And whilst you're completing that, I just want to take this opportunity to thank Stephen, Lance, Amrit, and Jayshree for great presentations. We will be sharing their presentations out with their links and resources discussed along with this recording to everyone here today. Thank you so much, and thank you so much for completing the poll. And for those who are watching on Facebook, thank you for joining us.